the comedian, one way or another, and certainly when I got into alternative comedy in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid and a teenager, the comedian was an outsider commenting on society from outside. And because what people that would once have been alternative comedians are now celebrities, it's very difficult to do that. I mean, a lot of the people that are famous comedians now, the way they're marketed and the way they behave and the work they do is sort of part of what comedy would normally have perceived as the problem, the sort of idiocy of mass culture and the sort of crass elements of being a sort of rock and roll type celebrity. It's very difficult to separate that out now. I mean, Billy Connolly and Frank Skinner, both in their own way, got round the fact that they became part of the establishment by doing routines where they appear to be reporting back on your behalf. Like Billy Connolly will sort of tell you what it's like at a Royal Garden party, and he makes you feel like you sort of got in there with him sort of subversively and like you shouldn't have been there. But I mean, it is strange where something like Russell Brand's act, a lot of it seems to be a report on his own celebrity in a sort of in a celebrity-driven world, and it is strange. And I think part of the problem why there's such a lot of fuss at the moment about taste issues is because when the comedian was an outsider looking in, they were a sort of a low status figure. They're allowed to be like a holy fool, and they're allowed to criticise things and slag people off and make poor taste about jokes about things because they themselves don't have any status. They're what French clowning theorists would call a bouffon, kind of crazy figure that's let off the leash and isn't part of society. But if you are a status figure and you present chat shows and you do adverts and you're in newspaper gossip columns, then you're from the top applying pressure downwards rather than being like a little rat fighting upwards. And that's the difference between, if Jimmy Carr says something, his jokes are really beautifully constructed, but if it does have a sort of moral or ethical dimension, or it's making fun of some kind of victim figure, that's pressure coming down from a successful person. Whereas when Jerry Sadowitz does it, he looks like someone that wouldn't be allowed in a pub, you know, and he's sort of like a rat fighting upwards out of a sewer. So it's different, you know, the same line reads differently from different perspectives. I don't know if it's the case that to be more left-leaning and to be more fair has become the establishment. All the best-selling, most widely read newspapers in the country don't share that point of view. And I think that one of the sort of genius marketing moves of people like Top Gear or Richard Littlejohn or John Gorn is that they're able to give the impression that what they're saying is subversive and forbidden, when in fact it represents the views of the majority of people in the country. And it is the view that is echoed by all the country's best-selling newspapers and most listened-to talk radio shows. I think that sometimes it seems like people are more liberal-minded, like-minded than they are, because some of the people that have those opinions are quite high-profile. Certainly, when there was a survey lately about whether people should be allowed to wear burqas in positions of public office. And pretty much everyone said no. But in terms of being allowed to wear them in the street, the tolerance of that was exactly in line with age groups. So the younger people were, the more they didn't mind what anybody was wearing, whether it had religious connotations or not. So you're exactly right about that. I mean, but I think it is weird that because you can sort of say anything in broadcasting now, and because certain aspects of human rights and treating people equally across the board are enshrined in law, one of the places that an edgy comedian feels that they have to go is actually to be quite reactionary, which is an opposite position to 30 years ago. When I was 12, what being a stand-up comedian meant was you were either like one of these kind of folk singers, like Billy Connolly, Jasper Carrott, Max Boyce, or you were an old bloke in a bow tie talking about Pakistanis and mother-in-laws. Or there was this thing sort of starting of alternative comedy, which was a bit like punk rock. And obviously that's the ones we wanted to be, like them. But now, I don't know what kind of person would want to be a comedian. Because it just looks pretty horrible, I think, mainly. Most of the stuff you see on telly, it just looks like sort of venal egomaniacs slagging off Susan Boyle for being ugly, you know. And I kind of think, I hope that my son wouldn't look at that and want to do it, to be honest. So, I don't know, I don't think it's sort of, it's not the same, it doesn't occupy the same space culturally as it did when I was young. So I hope that it wouldn't be something he'd want to do.
See, I disagree with that personally,
Right.
because to me, people like you and kind of Dan Kitson are those equivalents of what you would have seen in the 70s. And I think there is a sizable group of my generation that do feel more your way. So
well, that's kind of you to say, but we're not. I mean, Daniel Kitson. Part of why Daniel Kitson's able to be as good as he is because fairly early on he realised that he couldn't see a way of engaging with a bigger audience without losing the right to do a lot of the things that he likes to do. So I think he's sort of, by definition, in his own mind, he thinks that he's not going to be someone lots of people see. And I mean, it's not, proportionately, he's not really known by lots of people. I don't think most people think of it like you do. And actually one of Frank Skinner's PR masterstrokes is to be the comedian who has read a book, you know, so, and that kind of like his audience go, he's a genius, he's read a book. When it was announced that Stewart Lee's comedy vehicle was going on telly, all these sort of celebrity book publishers come out of the woodwork and they want you to do things, just anything that they think you can sell. One of them wanted to do a book where I talk about funny cars called Stewart Lee's Comedy Vehicles, which obviously had no relationship to the content of the show. Another one of them, they were looking for some sort of angle, and I said that when I was ill, when I had my stomach problems, I was told by the hospital to eat a baked potato every day. So I got really good as I was touring around the country at finding where the baked potato vans were. I could sort of vibe out. So I was going to write a book about all the baked potato vans around Britain. And then the publisher didn't want that because they'd already done Stuart Maconie's Pies and Prejudice, which had the word pie in it, and a potato similar to a pie, obviously. So it's pretty slim pickings out there. There would have been some quite big advances, but they wouldn't have been things that you'd want to contribute. And it's a bit like what you were saying earlier about the comedian is an insider now. Like loads of comedians, the books they write, the stuff they produce, it just adds to the weight of utter shit in the world, and that should be the stuff they're making fun of. Anyway, then by sheer coincidence, I found out that a load of people at Faber and Faber, the poetry publishers, had all been like watching the show. So I went in and met them, and it was really funny because they were really excited because for them, I wanted to do a book where the transcripts of the stand-up were annotated in the same way as you might do notes on a poem. Like Faber have got an edition of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, where the flip side of the page is all Ezra Pound's edits. And I thought it would be funny to present transcripts of 3 stand-up shows as if they were high art, right? And there's no better place to do that than with Faber. But it's quite funny how it's worked out, because for Faber, this is like the sort of trashiest thing they've ever done, probably a comedy book. But as far as books about comedy go, it's with Faber. It's the most highbrow comedy book that's ever been done. So they're sort of bumping it, but it's actually going really well. I mean, because I really like Dave Allen, and I read a biography of Dave Allen a couple of years ago, and it was all about what he wore and what he drank and what shows they went to and who he was friends with, and there wasn't a single thing about how he wrote the material or how it was generated or how he ran it in, and that's what I was interested in. So this book's like the opposite of that. There's nothing personal in it at all. It's absolutely just about how I came up with ideas and how I got them to work on stage. So it's sort of quite, I think, anyone wanting to know what colour my pants are won't like it. But if you're so dull that you're interested in how the changing of one word could change, it's mainly about stuff like that.